These reclining nudes are probably Amedeo Modigliani's most popular. They insert themselves in a long tradition of reclining nudes in art history, though instead of being framed mythologically, notably through the figure of Venus, these are much more sensual, some may say pornographic. Modigliani is apparently very known. I say apparently because I didn't know much about him and honestly didn't have much of an interest for him. In his 1981 essay Modigliani's Alphabet of Love, my favorite art critic, John Berger, writes that, with Van Gogh, Modigliani is probably one of the most regarded of modern artists. I mean that literally, the most looked at by the most people. Things have either changed since 1981 or I'm out of some art history loop. Of course, I knew Modigliani by name, but never had any reason or interest to look into his work. At least, not until DaneCube7397 wrote, "Please do a video on Modigliani" in a comment on my latest video. So I looked into him, not DaneCube7397, but into Modigliani because of my unflinching commitment to my subscribers. The reason why I didn't have an interest in looking into Modigliani's work is because I felt like it relied too heavily on style. I always felt that when looking at a Modigliani, I was looking at a work of art that was meant to look nice, rather than a work of art that was meant to make you think or to provoke you. These look, to me, like artworks you'd find on the wall of some fancy restaurant. The kind of works that get ignored not because they're bad, but because they blend into the decor so nicely. To me, that's not a good thing. However, I decided to look at the subjects of these paintings rather than their style, and I found a way to appreciate some of Modigliani's portraits. Modigliani's life was both tragic and dramatic. It's known to be filled with alcohol, drugs, women, and poverty. He was the Parisian bohemian artist par excellence. When looking at his paintings now, you don't see the once controversial outsider, the rebellious, struggling artist that Modigliani was. You don't see the struggle, the violence, the ruggedness. No, you see elegance, the delicateness of curved lines. The period of Modigliani's life I want to look at is when the artist was 33 years old, 2 years before his death. In 1918, Paris was being bombarded by the Germans, and Modigliani left with his pregnant fiancée, Jeanne Hébuterne. 1918 marked the end of the First World War, but it also marked one of Modigliani's most prosperous period. One of the subjects he painted the most was Jeanne Hébuterne, the woman he hoped would become his wife. Hébuterne was herself an artist, painting in many different styles, including Modigliani's. She was 19 when they met in 1917. A year later, she would give birth to their daughter, who was named after her, Jeanne. However, Jeanne, the mother, isn't known today for her works of art. They're pretty hard to find online, but she is known for being Modigliani's model. He painted over 20 portraits of her. Berger, in his essay Modigliani's Alphabet of Love, writes, "He knew that the problem was to find and reveal the structural laws, the gestalt, of some of the ways by which love visualizes a loved one. He was concerned with romantic love, seduction. His images are about being in love." Nevertheless, despite his romanticism, Modigliani refused the obvious romantic shortcuts of symbols, gestures, smiles, or expressions. This is probably the reason why he often suppressed the look of the eyes. He was, at his strongest, not interested in the obvious signs of reciprocal love, but only in how love holds and transports its own image of a loved one, how the image concentrates, diffuses, distinguishes, and is both emblem and existence, like a name. This may be true for other sitters, but I feel like Berger is wrong if we look at the portraits of Jeanne Hébuterne. It's always weird and clumsy to try to interpret a subject's expression in a painting, but at least in this portrait made of Jeanne in 1919, how can you not see the smile and the unsuppressed look in her eyes that seem, at least to me, to exude reciprocal love? He did often paint Hébuterne with the suppressed look of the eyes, as in this painting in the Met, But what about this painting of her looking back at the artist, again, a smile at the corner of her mouth? This portrait of Jeanne, made in 1919, was one of her last ones, if not her last one. Modigliani died of tubercular meningitis at the age of 35. The next day, Jeanne Hébuterne, 21 years old, pregnant with their second child, threw herself out of a window and died. Knowing this, it's hard to not look at Modigliani's portrait of his to-be wife and not feel anything. I'm not particularly attracted to the artworks of the man, but the artworks that lead to the end of Jeanne and Amadeo's relationship are disconcerting. If you know me and this channel, you know what I look for when I look at art. I'm looking for stories and experiences that can challenge the viewer intellectually or emotionally. Modigliani challenged viewers aesthetically at the beginning of the 20th century, and to me, that doesn't really grab my attention or interest. However, his relationship with Jeanne Hébuterne, his portraits of her and their tragic end, which have little to do with Modigliani's art, makes his portraits of her so much more meaningful to me. This portrait of Hébuterne impacts me, not because of the way this portrait is made, but for reasons completely outside of Modigliani's control. This portrait impacts me because of Hébutern's love for Modigliani and her tragic Shakespearean end due to the loss of her lover. Though Modigliani painted this portrait, it was Hébuterne who gave it a tragic story that impacts us over a century after its making. Thank you so much for watching the video. I know it's been a very long time. I've been quite busy with something else. I'm making a video to explain why I've been so away recently. So check out for that upcoming video. Quite a big change in my life, and I'm excited to show the video that explains what that change is. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for liking, subscribing if you haven't already. Thank you to Roman Brandel, X-Towns, and all my other patrons for supporting the channel. And if you also want to support the channel, check out patreon.com/thecanvas. Thank you.